Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin. And we're here to talk about none other than your Baltimore Ravens. Normally, we don't go live on a Tuesday night. We haven't, at least for the past, 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We've been trying to put together some videos and then going live on Thursday. But, we thought it would be a good idea to talk this one out together as a crew, right? Kind of check the pulse on everyone, make sure everyone's still alive, make sure everyone's still okay, and talk about, what our frustrations are, air some of those. It's a little bit of a therapy session, right? And then also see where we can move forward. So I'm excited to do that tonight. Glenn, how are things going?
Oh, it's going pretty well. It not the best week to turn on Get Up and ESPN and hear what they're saying about the Ravens. It's not right now the brightest time after coming off a 4-game win streak, right? 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not the best time to listen to that stuff, but it's definitely a time. I think therapy, like you called it, a therapy session. It does feel like that, because sometimes I just kind of want to out of sight, out of mind when it's not going well. At least I don't want to hear a bunch of national pundits give opinions that might hurt my feelings. But I think this will help. So I'm glad we're in here live. What's going on, Sean? What's going on, Nana, Rave, Orion? What's going on? Let's go. Yeah, Nana. I'm still hurting right now too.
Yeah.
Especially the way things are going. The frustration is pretty clear. It's pretty evident across this team. It's weird. It's like some people are extremely frustrated, and then others are almost like, especially when you ask about the fourth quarter collapses, Jimbo, some people are just like shell shocked and almost numb. It looks like, because it's like, how does this happen again? Especially the defensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the concern when things start to become a trend, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different takes as to who's most to blame, as to where the blame is being doled out and things. But I think one thing we can all agree on is that no one is free of blame in this game.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe Justin Tucker. I mean, they asked him to hit a 67-yarder. I don't know how much you can blame the guy. I'm sure
not
he's blaming
giving him
himself plenty.
any blame. I mean, yeah, I'm not blaming him. But yeah, a lot of blame to go around both sides of the ball. But yeah, I mean, it's let's see what Sean has to say, because Sean took the loss pretty hard last week. A lot like a lot of us did. Evening, boys. Feeling a tiny bit better than the other day. Like you said, I took the loss pretty hard. However, it's just because I know this team is better than what they're putting on the field. Yeah, I think that there's no doubt that, and that is exactly right, and why this is so frustrating, because let me just see. I had something pulled up. There's been 4 teams, Jimbo, in NFL history to have led by more than 1 possession in each of their first 11 games. The 42 Bears, who were 11-0 at the time, the 2009 Saints, who are also 11-0, and the 2011 Packers, 11-0, and then finally the Baltimore Ravens, 2022, sitting at 7-4. So while it doesn't look good if you just focus on the win-loss and the fourth quarter, man, all their wins, Jimbo, they've had sizable fourth quarter leads in every one of their losses, and that makes me feel at least that I know this team hasn't been completely outclassed. They haven't been just beat up, like they just haven't been beat down.
Yeah, from whistle to whistle, it hasn't just been complete domination and annihilation, right?
Right. You don't look at any of those teams and go, oh, man, I don't want to see them again. They really just beat the crap out of it. No, we were handling all those teams through 3 quarters.
The hard thing, of course, is that we all know the fourth quarter is winning time. We all know the fourth quarter is where champions are made. And it's really difficult to continue to ride into the fourth quarter, not on your hands and knees, praying to whoever it is above that you believe in, hoping that the Ravens do not lose another double-digit lead. So that's the scary part, because they're, like you said, I mean, you just read about this trend. And the Ravens are the only one of those teams, if I'm not mistaken, I understood that correctly, that aren't undefeated after 11 games. So yeah, it's a really difficult one. One of the things that come to my mind, and we're going to kind of get through this and talk about the different areas of blame, right, in this show. One of the things I want to talk about is the defense, but I want to talk about the defensive coordinator. And I want to take an optimistic spin on this one. Obviously, McDonald is new. And I feel like if you look at what he did at the beginning of the season in comparison to how he's doing now. I think it's fair to say we've seen improvement in his play call and his scheme as a defense. So do you think that, he's in his absolute age, but he's also a young coach. This is his first year as an NFL coordinator. Does that give you hope in that, he's not a guy that maybe like Wink, who is already, hit the peak of his career, or not that Wink's hit the peak of his career, but what I mean is you're 30, 40 years in, right? Like how much more are you going to continue to get better, where he's at the beginning stages where growth is the most rapid, right? Does that give you encouragement for the rest of the season?
Yeah, well, it certainly gives you encouragement for the long haul. There's benefits to either side. Obviously, a guy who's been around has seen it all and probably done it all, and so nothing will surprise him. And then there's benefits to being a young guy, and that he's maybe a little more malleable, and that he'll fit his scheme around his players' skill set rather than trying to jam, hit players into his scheme that may not necessarily fit. I think there's benefits to both sides. I'm not down on Mike Macdonald to the point where I'm not, I'm ready to try and replace the guy or thinking that he's just not the right guy. I don't think that's the case. I think what happened in last week's game, at least, is, they dominated for 3 quarters. And then they had that fourth quarter where, again, we saw Marlon Humphrey leave for just a handful of plays. And it just seems like the secondary completely falls to shambles when he's not out there. And also, are we starting to see that maybe Kyle Hamilton was becoming just such a big part of that defense that when you removed him, that was also a big problem? Either way, the guy's got to get it done. But I'm not ready to. I think Mike Macdonald's doing just fine. And I've, like you said, we've seen improvement every week except for the fourth quarter in this game.
Yeah, so that's the spin I'm taking on this one, right? Because like you said, there's 2 ways to take it and say, dang, he's a young guy, and can he pick it up this year? Or you can say he's a young guy, so every single game he's learning. So hopefully by the time the playoffs are around, if we get in, right, then he'll be kind of tip top and ready to go. But outside of that, I kind of want to move from the play calling to the defense, because one of the takes that I heard a lot, of course, from the national media was, look, Lamar did his job, so he can wipe his hands clean of this game, right? He did his job. You gave him time in the fourth quarter, got him the lead, and the defense didn't hold.
Yeah.
So first off, before we talk about the defense not holding, what say you to that point, Glenn? Do you think that it's fair to Lamar to, in some ways absolve himself and say, dude, job responsibility, check, right? Like, I'm off the books here. It was on you guys. Not that Lamar would do that, right? I'm not saying he's doing that, but what I mean is that's the narrative that's being floated around.
Yeah, well, in that specific drive and where they gave them the lead, you could say on that drive they did their job. But there was plenty of cases throughout the game where they came up short in the red zone and didn't do their job. So I think it's a team game. I mean, they'll all tell you that if the offense, is hoping to get 7, ultimately only gets 3 and puts the defense in a tough spot, well, then now it's the defense's job to pick up the offense. And they work together. So I think it's you have a collapse of a 9-point lead with 5 minutes left. It's a team failure, not just an offensive or defensive. They both played their part and their role in this loss. And man, it's so frustrating, man. It's the freaking Jaguars. Like, you don't think.
Well, it's going to be really scary if this Denver game goes bad. It's going to be there might be all out chaos in Baltimore. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, if Let's Ride comes in here and puts on a show, especially because even now, I mean, their offense is still going backwards. It's not like it's getting better. But yeah, we got plenty of time to talk about those guys. But my question to you, back to you, Jimbo, is more about the personnel. I'm not as concerned, I guess, about the coaching staff. I think they'll get
from
better.
From the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, we're still talking on defense.
Yeah, okay.
I think we got tons to talk about on the offense here shortly. We're just letting some more people trickle in. But defensively, let's say we have all the confidence in Mike Macdonald and the rest of the coaches. Do you still have, like, what's your thoughts on where Marcus Peters is currently this season and kind of his play? And also another scenario, I'm looking at the snap counts, Jimbo, and I see just 25 snaps for Odafe Owe. He's out snapped by, Pierre Paul, Justin Houston, Broderick Washington, Tyus Bowser, Calais Campbell, Metabike. All those guys get a lot more snaps than him. And so I start to wonder, like, what's your thoughts on those two guys from a personnel standpoint?
Yeah. So, when I think about Marcus Peters, I'm getting concerned that now that he's a bit older and he has the ACL, that it's going to take another year to see him back at form, right? And my concern is that if he's not at 100% form when you play the type of game that he does, you either win big or before he can mitigate some of his mistakes because he's physically gifted, right? Just a physically gifted guy. But now when you don't have the same athletic ability to lean on, you can no longer mitigate some mistakes that you make because you're doing a bit of guessing or gambling, as I guess a better way. And now when you get beat, it's really, really bad, right? So that's a part of it. And then also just the effort thing is struggling. So I can live with the other part, the first part that I just described, because a lot of it's out of his control. Like he's probably worked really hard at his rehab to get back and stuff like that. And it just takes time. But the other part of it, when it's just simply effort, that's got to change to a certain extent. And the thing about Marcus that I think is interesting that makes me not as concerned is while he's had a bad streak, Marcus, I feel like, is also a pretty polarizing personality, right? Like he's very up and down. Like remember when Michael Scott walks into Jim's office and he's like 1 through 10, like, how are you feeling? 1. I'm normally a 10. You know what I mean? Like
one or the other.
Yeah, he's very up and down. Like there's games where he's so engaged and there's other games where he just kind of has an attitude,
Oh, and it's also something where it seems like once he gets something going, it can start to snowball.
Yeah. 100%. So I'm not crazy concerned about Marcus. I'm just so disappointed at Dafe Owe, and it is the worst "I told you so" I've ever had to say. But I have.
I'm getting sick and tired of you getting some of these right when you're like, I mean, that one a lot of people were questioning when he has 0 sacks, but I still believed the hype. When everybody's talking about the greatest workout, that's what I heard. The greatest edge workout that the coaching staff had ever seen is what.
And it's so funny because I think. I like Eric DaCosta. Yeah. I don't think Ozzie drafts him. Because Ozzie doesn't need to see a stupid workout. Ozzie just put on the tape.
Yeah. They seemingly got fooled by the workout.
So to me, I'm concerned about that one. But I'm excited about Ajabo.
Ajabo's back. That's got to be it's exciting, but man, we're going to see more Dafe Owe snaps going bye-bye. I mean,
because exactly. There's just another guy to add into that group.
Crazy, man. I just never expected this. I didn't expect a regression from last season.
Yeah.
Like massive. I mean, it is what it is. But
yeah,
let's just hope they can bounce back. Let's hope Marlon's injury. I mean, he did come back. I believe, but did miss 6 snaps during the second.
What do we know?
Touchdown.
What do we know about this injury right now?
Just an ankle. That's all I know to this point. It's just he's just dealing with an ankle.
I was wondering if there's anything I missed. That was the same thing I saw. Okay.
Yeah, it's still that's all I'm getting right now. But I mean the defense has got to quit with the collapses. But let's get over. Oh, before we switch to the offense, shout out Brandon Williams. Getting a contract. He's going to be signed to the Chiefs practice squad.
We hate the Chiefs, but that's good for you, Brandon.
That's right. Good for Brandon. I didn't realize Joe Cullen is the defensive line coach after he was let go from the Jags.
Yeah, I didn't until I read that.
Yeah, so that was a good pickup for them. Joe Cullen's a hell of a coach. And Brandon Williams, if nothing else, he'll eat some blockers. He'll eat some blockers. Guy looks like he's in incredible shape. But let's just hope if he plays the Ravens that him and the rest of his teammates have a horrible game.
Yeah. Well,
but other than that, I'll be rooting for him.
James Lee Wiley's giving us a good transition here, Glenn. So let's use this here. James says if they don't fix their red zone struggles, they will never make it in the playoffs. Mahomes will light us up in the fourth quarter. Yeah. Okay. So this is perfect because James, we're going to move over to the offense side of the ball. It's kind of where you were going anyway, right, Glenn?
Yep.
So if you want, we can start because look, we're going to talk about the offense as a whole. We're going to talk about Lamar. We're going to talk about the drops. We're going to talk about the red zone, talk about the run game, talk about the OC, a lot of stuff. So, I mean, we might as well start. All of that is kind of combined in the red zone. But one of the things that you pointed out, and I'll pass it over to you here, but one of the things that you pointed out is just the stark difference in effectiveness in the red zone, basically since Lamar's been here. Obviously, 2019 was a peak, historic season. But basically, since Lamar's been here, he's been really good in the red zone. And as an offense, it just has not looked the same. So my question to you, Glenn, is where do you see the biggest points of failure in the red zone? And what are some things that you think can be changed in order to improve in the red zone?
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, it looks like it's just that, and you start to wonder if some of this stuff is psychological,
Mm-hmm.
because I hear guys talking about it in the pressers, and they're saying we got to be better in the red zone, we got to be, we got to be more sharp, we got to be this, and it makes you wonder, like, if they could just kind of take that pressure off themselves and just do what you do, and if it'll come. But I start to wonder if this snowballs, if some of that is just built-in internal pressure that they're putting on themselves, because it's insane. I mean, look, you look at the first drive, they go 11 plays, 65 yards, field goal.
Mm-hmm.
Next drive, 8 plays, 38 yards, 4 minutes, field goal. Two drives later, 12 plays, field goal. It's like coming out to start the second half. The second quarter, 10 plays, field goal, 74 yards, Jimbo, 10 plays, 74 yards, field goal. That can't happen. Like, it just can't happen. It's too. So it's showing they're moving the ball between the 20s. As soon as they get inside that red zone and the field shrinks, they're just not getting things done. So it makes you wonder if it's psychological. I heard Lamar Jackson, when asked about the red zone struggles, he says it looks good in practice.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. It's like, why is it not translating from the practice field when we know they're practicing against great talent? You're not going to find that much better talent around the league. It's not like you're practicing against the 32nd ranked, defense that has no talent. You're like, well, of course it's going to look good in practice against these bums. But that's just not the case. So it makes you wonder what's getting lost in translation from practice to the game time. Is it simply the schemes of the defensive coordinators are just baffling? I find that hard to believe. So I'm kind of puzzled too, Jimbo. It's like, what is they can move the ball between the 20s, historically had great success in the red zone. I don't understand what the issue is now. They never had great red zone targets outside of Marcus. It's outside of Mark Andrews. So I don't know if that's a new thing to have an issue with. Like, Marquise Brown isn't a red zone target, and he's the only guy who's really missing.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple things. Uncharacteristic drops from Andrews, right? And even some other guys, but specifically Andrews, because he's been so reliable. The other thing that comes to mind, I'm going to look this up after I kind of mentioned this just to verify, but I also felt like there have been times where we've utilized Lamar's legs a bit better in the red zone. And maybe part of the reason why we didn't do it as well this game was because dude was running all over the place, right? Like, he was running the rock so much, but I feel like they're when you get down in the red zone and it's just heads up offense and your quarterback becomes a runner, I feel like that, however lethal that is in the middle of the field, because then you have an extra blocker, right? You don't have to give it to a back. You don't have a guy in the backfield just stand there, doing nothing. That guy is now the most dangerous runner on the field in the red zone, where it only takes 3 yards or 8 yards to put up 6 on the board. That is so much more valuable. And I feel like, I know obviously there was a couple of moments where he ran it in the red zone, but I just feel like the utilization of that was something that was a bit lacking, and I think the Ravens can improve upon.
But they got to be able to throw better in the red zone.
Having Ronnie hurt, not having Ronnie right in pass protection for sure.
Bateman's injury has been proven to be kind of devastating here, Jimbo.
Yeah.
It's really as bad as we thought it would be. It's starting to become even worse than I thought it could be. I look at the stats, even with Bateman missing so many games and haven't played in so long. I look at the yak yards. He's still second on the team in yak. How many games has he played? He's played in 7 games, and really, let's be honest, he didn't play in the one. He got hurt right away, so let's knock that down to 6. He missed time in other games, so let's call it he played 5 games, and he's second barely to Mark Andrews in yak yards. The guys around him, they dropped 3 touchdowns. Mark was responsible for 1 of them. These guys aren't getting the damn job done, even because first of all, they're not getting a ton of separation. And when they are able to get separation, whether that's through what they're doing or through scheme, which some of this stuff was schemed open, they're dropping the wide open balls, Jimbo. It's absolutely and I could see if this was like, Isaiah Likely dropping the ball, or I could see if it's some James Prochet, or if we're relying on Tylan Wallace. But this is Mark Andrews, Devin Duvernay, guys we're supposed to be able to count on. Demarcus Robinson. Man, it's just not good enough, Jimbo.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I guess the easiest answer and the way to solve this is guys need to play better, right? Like you just need to play better, throw the excuses out the window, and catch the football, right? I think that also, I mean, what's your take on the fact that, I mean, maybe the likely absence hurt? I wasn't concerned about it, but maybe it was schematically he does a bit more, even though he's not catching a ton of passes right now. He does a bit more to help Mark and the other guys get a little bit more open, because
maybe he catches that one Josh Oliver didn't.
Yeah, that's another great point. Or he just, he runs around, he puts himself in a better situation, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, at the end of the day, he comes down with it. So that's another.
What do you think about this stat, Jimbo? Just tell me if you read it into this stat at all, or if I'm just crazy. Deshaun Jackson played 10 snaps in the game total. He was second on our team in receiving yards. He had 2 catches, which was fourth on the team. But he had second in yards, and he played 10 snaps. He had 2 catches. Is that a problem when Deshaun Jackson, who just got here a couple weeks ago, is 35 years old, he plays 10 snaps, and he's your leader in the wide receiver room?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It is and it isn't. It is because the other guys aren't making highly impactful plays, whether that's Yak or whether that's in a long pass scenario like Deshaun. But it isn't if the offense, right? Like, what we need is just more production, whether that's from tight ends. Like, so it is and it isn't. I'm taking a political answer here, but this is my question back to you, Glenn, is that if with that case, really the only guys we have coming back are Kohler and Likely, no receivers.
And J.K. Dobbins returning to practice, but
and J.K. Dobbins. But if you're talking pass catchers, really, it's just Kohler and Isaiah. With the wide receiver group we have right now, if those stats, like you just mentioned, stay the same, do Kohler and Likely with the development of Oliver and Mark, is that enough to convince you that this team can contend, right, and can get it done in the fourth quarter in a situation where they need to make a string of catches? Is that enough for you?
That's the $1 million question, right? Man.
Yeah, which side of the line you falling on? I just drew a line.
Here's the thing. I think this team's good enough to compete. When you are the only team in the league who has had a fourth quarter lead against every team you've played, and
you're a good football team.
You're not a bad team. When you're the only team, only the fourth team in NFL history to have a double-digit lead or a 7+ point lead in every fourth quarter, that you're not a bad team. And we've seen this offense hit on all cylinders in not so distant past. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that they had that the Saints game with nobody. They didn't have Mark Andrews on the outside. They didn't have who wasn't Duvernay missing. Who else missed it?
Bateman was gone.
Yeah, there was a bunch. Oh, JK's first. Gus, no JK.
Yeah, JK, no, you're right.
And yet they had an extraordinarily efficient game and blew out a pretty decent Saints team on the road. I think this team can still play at a higher level than they're currently playing. They're not the most talented group of pass catchers, right? But every offense has its warts. And if you look around at the teams that do have great weapons, I bet they don't have nearly the offensive line that we have. I can guarantee you that probably. You look at their running back room. If the teams have great receivers, they probably don't have the running backs, So I think all teams have their warts. These guys just gotta play at least to the level of expectation. And right now they're playing below that level.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the one that's come on here and said we don't need the top flight guy. I'm excited to see what Isaiah and Kohler do. Obviously, we've seen Isaiah, but the combination of Kohler and with the outbreak, if you will, the coming out party, if you will, of Josh Oliver, that just makes it even more exciting and even more hard for us to defend. So I'm excited to see those four together. But you're right. I mean, this receiving core just needs to do more to hold up their end of the bargain. But Jared Ramirez says, my problem is that EDC made our number one wide receiver a guy who hasn't played a full season. The injury was worst case scenario, and there didn't seem to be a backup plan. And this is something we've been talking about since the preseason. Yeah. A lot of people here have been talking about as well, like what happens if Bateman goes down? Because with Bateman there and the other guys kind of firing on all cylinders, it sounded like a decent room.
Yeah.
But he went down, right?
Worst case happened, like Jared said.
Yeah. So I can't absolve EDC of that. You just can't.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that there's got to be at least a position or maybe a few positions on your roster that as a GM with the confinements of the salary cap and everything built in, there's got to be at least a position or two where you have to go, all right, we're going to have to go light here and hope we don't have injuries and hope that things roll our way and hope that young guys develop. Mm-hmm. He had to have looked at this and gone, all right, I understand this is probably a position where we cannot afford injury and we're banking on some growth and development of young guys to perform in a bigger way. I don't you think Eric saw this kind of coming in a way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I think you have to take a gamble. And then I think each team prioritizes, like you said, their position groups, right? And based on the market, I don't think Eric was ever, and being close with Bishotti, I don't think they were ever going to decide to pay Tyreek Hill numbers or Devontae Adams numbers or, even some of these other guys that got big paychecks. Obviously, they didn't want to give Marquise A.J. Brown numbers. Now, I'm not saying he should get A.J. Brown numbers, but that's the going rate for a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
And so the Ravens just weren't willing to do it, right? So I think really to make up for that as best as he could, said, okay, let's just go to a lower value position in the tight end. And now they've got 4 guys that potentially are all going to be, really good pass catchers with, once again, Joshua Oliver. And we'll see what comes of Charlie Kolar, because that's still a mystery, a guy that we haven't seen out there. So, yeah, I mean, Jared, we can't absolve him of that. But like Glenn said at the same point, the only thing that you can speak to is that no one has a perfect roster, right? I mean, there's teams that struggle on the O-line. There's guys that have guys in the backfield that we've never heard of from Appalachian State, and what else? Teams that have deficiencies at quarterback. Ask the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah.
So it's just a really tough one. But I mean, at the end of the day, no excuses.
No excuses at the end of the day. But let me ask you this: if Eric DeCosta is the guy, who we're going to blame for the lack of depth and overall talent of the wide receiver room, then at the same time, does that not absolve Greg Roman of some, because a lot of people want Greg Roman out of here. And honestly, I'm starting to lean towards this. This must be, this can't be Lamar gets a long-term contract and they sign Greg Roman long-term. I'm starting to be in that camp that maybe it was the perfect guy for the job when he was a rookie and a young guy. But now at this point, it's time for them to go different ways, not mid-season, but, maybe postseason. But if we're going to blame Eric DeCosta, if we're going to say he didn't give him enough weapons, then how is this Greg Roman's fault? And could another guy not named Greg Roman have done a better job with the same group?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good question. So I kind of want to unpack what you said there. And I like your thought, and I totally get it. I mean, and what I would do, I don't know, this is just me, but I would simply lay the cards on the table and say, Greg, look, you've got to know, man, that unless something groundbreaking happens this year, the Ravens are going to make a change. So go all out, right? You know what I mean? Put everything you got into it, because this is a make or break, right? And so with that in mind, I understand your point, and I think I tend to agree with you. I still like Greg Roman. I think in the circumstances we have, which is what you're saying, speaking to those circumstances, he's the guy to get it done. I don't think there's a better scenario for the way the team is constructed. I can't think of too many other guys who could do more with what he has, who could get more out of Lamar in the state of the offense. You know what I mean? So like you said,
but now with a full off season, that might be a different story, right? Because you can then
guy.
Yeah, but right now they tried to. I just don't know if anyone, how much better a guy could be doing with what he has.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that, like you said, a lot of people are piling on. A lot of people have said, and I get it. All of it's justified. Greg Roman is not absolved from this conversation. He absolutely deserves a lot of blame here. I mean, the habitual play call.
I think it's time. I think it's time to move. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the only way.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Go ahead, Jimbo. Sorry.
Yeah, the only way that it's not is that if he absolutely dominates till the rest of the season. You know what I mean? We go on this epic run. It has to be epic. If not, it's run its course, right?
And I'm glad you brought up the late, the play clock being down to 0 half the time when the ball is snapped. And I get that some of this, because John mentioned that some of that's by design. Well, yeah, of course, when you're in the 4-minute mark of the game and you're up by 10, you're snapping the ball with the
Plenty
clock
of
at
times
0.
where that wasn't the case, period.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad. I think this was on, was this
on?
on?
You talking about this graph?
Yeah, on Jonas Schaefer's.
Let me see if I can pull it up.
Let's see. I got it up here.
Okay, cool.
I think I do. I'm trying to pull it up. But yeah, I think it's interesting because, man, when you really see it left on the screen here, you kind of see, man, it is a huge problem that they got to get kind of figured out here. All right, let's go. Here I go. I got the graph so I can stop filibustering. Right. But if you look at the how often the Ravens are snapping the ball with 3 seconds or less on the clock. I don't know if you can see that or if I have to blow that up any further. I don't know if you know how to do
I mean,
that,
you guys
Jimbo.
can already guess. It's the Ravens all the way to the right.
Like, by far the worst as far as, getting the – and the problem with that is, of course, it allows the defense to time the snap better. When the clock is at 0, they know you're snapping it then or it's going to be a delay of game either way, so they can turn up the field. It doesn't allow for Lamar or the rest of the offense to survey the defense and kind of – trying to get a feel for what they're running or get a feel for what they're going to look like post snap. It kind of, you pick the play, you run up and you have to snap it. And it doesn't matter what the defense is showing you. You can't make any adjustments. It's got to be better.
Unwillingly constraining yourself or, you know what I mean? Unnecessarily constraining yourself in a way that you shouldn't be, right? Unless it is actually for strategic reasons. Which it definitely is not every single time. So a couple things need to happen. Shorten your cadence, Greg, or speed it up. And Lamar, get to that wristband a little faster and get it out a little faster. And then, of course, third, offensive lineman, no more trotting up. Let's get up there. Let's get a little pep in the step and get up to the line, right?
I just can't believe this is still a problem.
Right. It's like, is this high school?
This should be like a 1-week problem. And then they go, yeah, we're not going to let that be a problem anymore. And then fix it. Like, this shouldn't be something that takes like it's not like red zone issues, like where it has layers to it. It's
yeah. This is very simple.
This should be fixed like that. It's unbelievable that we're still dealing with this. And I certainly hold John Harbaugh extremely accountable, Greg Roman accountable, and then to some degree, Lamar Jackson accountable because he's the quarterback and that's just how it is. But you got to get it better. This should be something that's fixed in 2 seconds. It's unbelievable that this 100%. Is ever a problem. But yeah, as you can see, it's very much a problem if the Ravens are by far the worst in that regard. Now, I will say this. There's times where it is by design, and that's why you see these crazy long drives and you see the Ravens dominate time of possession like no other team. But this shouldn't be happening in the damn first quarter of football games.
Yeah, agreed 100%. Jared says, do you guys think an up-tempo offense would benefit us? This is an interesting one for me because there are moments when we're really moving the ball down the field from a running perspective. And you start to see the defensive linemen doing these, putting their hands on their hips, gasping for air and things like that. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm seriously answering all in the gray area tonight. It's just all depends on the scenario within the game. Obviously, upping the tempo, your standard tempo is a necessity because of what Glenn just put up on the screen. But with that being said, I would like to see it. I think it would be a lot of fun.
But Greg's not the guy for that job.
No, he's just.
That's the problem. If you want a better passing game, then Greg's not the guy, really. Like, he's not the guy to come in to fix your passing game. He's the guy who come in to fix your run game. James Lee Wiley says, y'all need to put a little more faith in D-Jax. I'm 68. Believe me, 35 is a good age. Well, I am 35, and it's not so bad, but it's not 25. It ain't no damn 25, Jimbo. I mean, how you feeling? What, you're 34, right?
No, man. Come on. Now I'm 32.
32. Damn it. You're way younger than me. Jeez.
Hey, I'm aging in reverse, bro. No, I wish I was aging in reverse. But yeah, I mean, it's just hard because 35 in football years is just different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just different. But that being said, I mean, I think it's a valid point. Maybe we should maybe the coaching staff should put him out on the field more.
Who's that? D-Jax?
D-Jax, yeah.
Well, I mean, they got to worry about his hammies.
That's true. Every other. And
now
he made the catch and he hurt his thumb.
You see, right away. I don't know how he fell. I thought he was going to catch that thing in stride and turn it up.
He's a Lambo, dude. He's a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
You gotta keep him in the shop. Keep him up. Keep the upkeep. You know,
keep fresh tires on.
You gotta work hard to go slow.
Yeah, that's true. It is hard to go slow in cars like that. There's no doubt about
absolutely. So now I want to get to this, Glenn. We've talked about Greg, talked about the coaching. We got to get to Lamar Jackson.
Yes.
There's so many things to peel back here and to talk about. First things first, I just kind of want to put this out there. As a whole, like a lot of people, a lot of different narratives around Lamar Jackson's post-game reactions and, the rant on Twitter and stuff like that. I want to say this. John said it, but I want to say it as a fan. Like, this is not the Lamar Jackson that we know for the most part. Yeah. I think we've all done things that are out of character. And I'm not trying to absolve him of anything. He needs to be a leader. He wants to get paid lots of money, and he needs to be better. But the reason I'm saying this is because I have faith that Lamar will be better. I'm not talking about just on the football field. I'm really talking about the post-game reactions, right? With that said, I told you this off air, Glenn. I don't know who it was that asked Lamar how he felt after the loss.
Stupid. Dude,
why?
Stupid
like I would have reacted exactly the same as Lamar.
Yeah, I had no problem with that response. Zero.
But I do hope and I believe that Lamar is taking this as an opportunity to learn and really just grow as a leader, grow as a person, grow as a player, and things like that. And I hope it benefits him in the long term, right?
I mean, do we have to say what the tweet was, or do we just assume that everyone knows it?
If you guys haven't seen, you can check it out. I mean, I'm okay with skipping over it.
Yeah,
unless you want to put it up on the screen.
I couldn't find it, honestly.
He deleted it.
Yeah, but I figured somebody else
would still have it up.
Would just still have it up, but yeah, basically he just called out a fan. I don't know if that guy was a member of the media or just a fan, but said, just pretty much called him out and said that you're always hating on him and you've never smelt a football field. And then the last line, I'm sure is a line he'd like to have back, Jimbo. Let's be honest. He said, I feel weird even saying it, which is funny because it's not something I haven't said. Like, I've said more vulgar things in my life, but it feels weird saying it on here. But yeah, he's just said, look it up. He said he said
eat a bowl of cereal.
Yeah. Eat a bowl of cereal, basically, except not bowl of cereal. If you know what he's saying. But, that is something that I think that no player, like John said, should go to Twitter within the first few hours of a football game, especially when you lose that football game. Because why? What good would ever come of it? You're only going to hear negativity from fans and internet keyboard warriors. That's all you're going to hear. So I don't think anything positive comes out of it. But I'm like you, Jimbo. It was a blip. This is not who Lamar Jackson is. Everything we've ever seen is that this guy is class, he's class personified. This guy treats the media with the utmost respect. He has manners on and off the football field. The way he interacts with kids just makes him a role model in my eyes. I don't know. I don't know if there's a backstory between those two guys, and maybe there is, and that maybe led to his reaction being so strong. But all I'll say is the unfortunate thing about an athlete is you just cannot engage in those because it only leads to negativity, coming towards you. So just don't get on Twitter, after a loss. Give it a few hours till you cool off. Like, hey, look, Jimbo, how fired up were you after that loss? How fired up was Sean Pisker on here? How fired up was a lot of these guys? Imagine being on the team.
Yeah, and all the sweat, blood, and tears and everything.
All the hard work.
Now, to Edwin's point, I can understand this. This is something we've talked about. If I poke your arm enough times, eventually it will irritate and cause reaction. Fans and media have been poking Lamar, and it finally ran over. I think that's fair. I think we've all seen that in players. I mean, in other sports, like, the LeBron post Dallas Mavericks championship meltdown, right? Like, that's an epic press conference. And there are other players that have had those moments and coaches as well. But it just never turns out well. I get it, Edwin, for sure. Like, I think to a certain extent, we can all empathize in that Lamar Jackson is an absolute lightning rod. But it just is what it is. You got to take the mantle and the good and the bad with it, right? Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this, Glenn, but I do believe that I'm going to sound like an old head here, but I think if Lamar Jackson had an agent, I think a few things would be different. I think that part of the reason why these things are happening is because I said it's just really difficult for all of us to compartmentalize our lives. And I think an agent is a way to compartmentalize your life and just be singularly focused on football and know that you have a guy who's a professional doing everything he can to make you more money. And whether or not he's actively engaged in conversations with, as far as we know, he's not. There's mental energy there devoted to that. And I do believe that it has manifestations and an impact on Lamar's feelings, his emotional state. I mean, you're telling me, Glenn, as a human being, you wouldn't feel some type of way if you asked for a raise and your boss is like, yeah, you're not worth that.
Well, I think that would be the feeling whether he had an agent or not. I don't think having
but
an agent
at least there's
stops
someone
that.
in the middle of it.
But at the end of the day, whether
You're right.
they sugarcoat it back to you by being the middleman, the message is still the same. And I think even with an agent, it's likely that this, frustration boiling over would have happened whether he had an agent or not. Now, the agent might help with the cleanup of that, but I don't think.
Yeah, this is light work for an agent.
Yeah, I don't think he would have prevented it from happening. He might have just helped clean up the mess a little bit. But Marco G says that guy tagged LJ and was looking to get a response. But the problem is, Marco, is that every quarterback, every player, whether you're at the top or if you're the bottom guy, if you mess up, you're good, and you go on Twitter, all you're going to see is a bunch of clowns adding you and trying to get a rise out of you in a response by saying something stupid.
Yeah, I mean, you don't think I was trying to get Zach Wilson to respond?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I mean,
100%.
You can't do it.
You were hoping that he would respond with every part of your being.
Yeah, I literally said on Twitter that Coach Whittingham didn't want anything to do with him because of his character issues.
And then added him.
Yeah, you don't think that you know what I mean? So it's just.
So of course that's what he's gonna get, and you just can't. That's why you just don't get on the app. I mean, it's not that difficult to not get on the app. I mean, look, it's hard to get me and Jimmy on this damn app.
Seriously, dude, phone jail it, Lamar. Phone jail the phone. Just put it in phone jail for a couple hours.
You can get on it after a win.
Right, but let's talk about Lamar the player, Glenn, because I think really. This year obviously is so monumental for him because of what's at stake, right? But if we're talking about this year and what's happened recently, I don't believe the narrative, and you kind of spoke on this. There's also people that have just saying, once again, that Lamar, he had his team up. He did it in the fourth quarter. There were all these drops. And there's a lot of people who like to blame everyone else but him. Lamar Jackson is certainly putting blame on himself, and I think it's fair that we do as well. Lamar Jackson, I can think of 3 plays that were overthrows in this game. And certainly, obviously the one to Oliver was like, I mean, that was a drop, but there was one to Mark.
D-Rob.
There was one to D-Rob, and I think there was also one I can think of to Duvernay as well. So, and then the other thing too is the decision-making with the RPO stuff wasn't its sharpest. Either. I think there was a few times where, once again, there was predetermination there.
No, in this game, it's not like Lamar. He missed a couple throws, is what I would. And I mean, he had some, but he had a good game. The guys let him down. But then there's games before where he missed guys, and everybody had their everybo's had their fair share.
Right, and that's really the point that I'm trying to say here is that it's not fair to just say, oh, it's everyone else, not Lamar. No way, right? Like he's angel and cleat or God and cleats. No, it's just not the case. Everyone had blame this game, right? So really quickly, Maxwell Jones says, call up Andy Isabella. We need help. I don't know the status of Andy.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I'm sure if he was doing anything in practice that was grabbing the attention of the coaches, then he'd already been up. And I'm not sure what he would provide. Maybe some deep ball threat, maybe, but that's what Djax is here.
Yeah.
And
now, Glenn, what I want to do really quickly, unless you got more to say about Lamar, I want to kind of let's add some positive to this thing.
Let's do it.
Because look, I want to say some things just to kind of frame this part of the conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not forget that we are still a half game ahead in our division because we have right now the tiebreaker with the Bengals. Unless I have something mistaken, we're both 7-4 and we have the win. So we're half game ahead. Everything is in our control. We still have a very favorable schedule coming down the end of the season stretch, the back half of the season. We have Marcus Williams coming back. Marlon wasn't seriously injured. We have Gus and JK. Gus is obviously going to get healthier every week. JK is coming back. We got Ajabo coming back. So I'm saying all these things because there is a lot to still be excited about.
Yeah. You say it right there, Jimbo. Even after the loss, the Ravens are heavy favorites to not just make the playoffs, but also win the AFC North. I mean, there's no doubt that everything is still in front of them. They still have a schedule in which they will be favored.
96% chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah, like we should still be.
Wow.
Everything is in front of the. Like, as frustrating as that loss was, let's remember they had won 4 in a row. Let's remember that even in all their losses, they've had a 7+ point lead in the fourth quarter in every single one of those losses. And all the teams in the AFC and NFC, for that matter included, have their warts and have shown that they can be beaten and have actually been those teams, some of those teams have been beaten down. Whereas the Ravens, at least, like I said, have had fourth quarter leads in all of their games, including their losses. Why? They're getting healthier. Marcus Williams is back at practice. J.K. Dobbins returns to practice this week. No doubt we're going to see Ajabo and Charlie Kolar next week. I mean, there is so much optimism around this team that even though last week's game was a massive disappointment, I still choose to be excited looking forward.
Yeah, 100%. That's where I'm at, and I'm looking, like you said, I'm looking forward to it. The Ravens have so much to be excited about that I can't wait. Man, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Kolar can do. Do you think he makes any sort of an impact this year, or are you just trying, are you kind of using the rest of this year as a wash? Do you see him doing anything impactful?
Man, I hope he does. I think it's one of those things where anything he gives you is just the cherry on top. You can't count on it. But we haven't seen him. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe the coaches are super excited and he's been blowing them away in practice. And maybe, hey, Lamar said it looks good in practice, the red zone. Well, it's because Charlie Kolar's only played in practice so far, Jimbo.
Dude, that's so funny. You literally just read my mind. It's almost exactly what I was going to say. If you talk about red zone issues, all right, well, let's take the 6'7" guy who boxes out like Dennis Rodman, right? And let's throw the ball up to him. How about that?
Let's do it. And speaking of those red zone, I do have some numbers in front of me here. I just want to quickly mention. And if they can just cure their red zone struggles, think about a difference this would make. In 2019, their red zone scoring percentage was 64.7%. In 2020, 59.1. In 2021, back up to 60.7. Right now, before yesterday's struggles, before the Jags game, 52%. So if they can just start to fix some of those red zone woes, I mean, my goodness, this team can be scary, absolutely scary.
100%. I can't wait to see what the Ravens do moving forward. And of course, we got the Broncos coming in town, and it is a bad time for the Broncos to be coming in town and dealing with a pissed off Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson, who are going to be looking to jump on them early. Early. I tell you what, this show today, Glenn, has really helped me realize that there's a lot of blame to be had. But I think that I've come out of it more positive because I really think when it comes down to the crew of guys that we have, and I didn't even mention Ronnie coming back, whenever that may be, and Kyle Hamilton. But the crew of guys that we have the right mentality to get it done, to bounce back and really learn and absorb and get better from it.
Well, let's just see. I hope to see improvements in a couple areas this week coming up. We have to see the play clock issues be just gone. No more play clock issues in this week. And I'm not saying this isn't something where, we're hoping to see a little marginal improvement. Now, 0 issues with the play clock should be the standard going into this upcoming week. I want to see unity on the team, and then I don't want to see frustrations leaking out because that's just not going to be good for anyone. I don't want to see from anybody. Stay unified as a team. I think that'll go a long way. And man, let's not let Russ start cooking today. I mean, this guy and that offense is a disaster. Let's let it keep that way and no fourth quarter explosive offensive outputs by the opponents.
Please. Right. Yeah. Let's stomp them out quick. No point intended. No pun intended. Excuse me. But I'm looking forward to it. Make sure you guys tune in on Thursday. We're going to be getting you prepped for the game, getting you excited about it. And I said in our last show that I'm never picking a blowout again. Glenn, I'm already thinking, I'm already back on the horse. I'm already feeling optimistic again. 1 week after I said they're going to run the table. Just a blip. Just a blip. Just a little. So we'll be right back to it. The Ravens are going to be back to it. Let's see. Edwin says, would y'all consider getting all 22 films as a guest on the show? His film analysis is amazing. We'll definitely consider it and probably put an outreach or put it out into the Twitterverse. See what comes back to us. We appreciate that, Edwin. And we try to be a show for the people.
That's it.
So we'll certainly give that a shot and see if they want to hang out with two schmucks like ourselves.
Well, speak for yourself. We have to announce the show or the fan winner last
these guys
week.
Are running the table.
Was this another a repeat?
Yeah, man.
Was it really?
From
when?
I guess I don't know. I think he won last year.
I think this was last year or the year before last.
Timothy Reynolds. Shout out.
Timothy Reynolds, shout out. My guy wins for the first time this year, but I believe he is a second-time winner from either last year or the previous. But yeah, congratulations, Timothy. This week's winner. Send us a private message with your shirt size and address. And
you can just confirm whether or not you moved, because we'll have your address in a previous message. But if you've moved, send us your new address.
There we go. If you are, in fact, the same Timothy Reynolds.
I feel DK. Right, exactly. I feel pretty good. DK is usually on it.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
So shout out to all you guys. I had a blast tonight, Glenn.
Yeah, it was a good time. I do feel a little bit better.
Hopefully.
Man.
Red zone woes. Let's look. Winning solves all, right? Like, just like a lot of other things in life, it can't fix all your problems, but certainly money can make life easier. Let's get the Ravens going in the red zone. Winning solves all. So let's get it done. But let's give some quick shout outs here, Glenn. Tanja Bowman, as always, in the comments. Edwin Navedo, thank you so much for coming out. Zach Hokage. Let's see who else we got in here, Glenn. Fat Nick 410. All right. Nana Rave. Shout out. Marco G, of course. Unpopular Facts. All you guys who came outside, we absolutely appreciate it. Looking forward to Thursday. As always, turn your notifications. Hit the subscribe button if you're new to the show. But we are looking forward to it, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
See you.